Okay, well, that didn't work, but anyway, so welcome to today's session for the HyperHack 2023 enablement. And I will just go through the agenda really quick. So today we're going to be covering just the introduction to what HyperHack 2023 is, what is a hackathon and how do you participate. We're going to go through the rules and categories, a couple of demos on AI and core business, judging criterion prizes, the submission guidelines and deadlines, tips on identifying your use case, and then tips on how to present and demonstrate your idea or project. And then I'll talk a little bit about what's next. So I'm not going to call out all these people, but they will as I start to talk. We have an all-star team today to help you get through this enablement session. So thank you all for joining us. The next slide, really, the introduction to HyperHack is we're looking for people who are interested in being problem solvers, are interested in creating effective groundbreaking solutions with UiPath technology, and just being innovative. So we welcome you today. We're excited by the number of people who are joining our hackathon, and we hope that you enjoy your journey with us as you go through it. The HyperHack page is at this URL, and this will be posted, the recording, and I'll put that in the chat at the end of the session. And then also you're going to be putting your use cases on the UiPath Forum page. So you have a URL for that as well. So what is a hackathon? The hackathon is really a creation of the word hacking and marathon. And these are usually open for several hundred hackers to compete, which we have. And the goal really is to develop a solution for a given problem. So we're really looking for you guys to be innovative, think of ways that we haven't thought of things, come up with things that you're experiencing within your own life, and how can you create a solution for that using UiPath tools and technology. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We also hope that during the session that you'll stop us, ask any questions, put any questions that you might have in chat. Again, we have a really good team here today. So we're here to help you with your hackathon submissions and answer any questions that you have. So the categories are really, the first category is AI-powered automation solutions, and the second is innovation through core business automation solutions. So anything you can think of with AI would fit into the first category. Anything you can think of that it doesn't include AI would be in the core business automation solutions category. You can be in more than one category. Each person on your team needs to register. And then what you would do is during the presentation phase, you will name your team and your team members, and that's where you could be part of more than one. So anybody can really participate in this. It doesn't matter if you're an RPA professional or not, a solution architect, partner, customer, student, engineer. Absolutely anybody can join this. The key dates, we've been through a few of them. So registration to open June 15th. The enablement sessions for the Americas began on June 22nd. This is our second one. The last day to register is July 14th. So that's a big date. And then the last date for submitting a functional demo of your idea or solution is July 21st. So again, if you have any questions about any of these dates or anything, please just let us know on this call and we'll answer that. And then the rules and regulations. The only thing really here is that you can't be submitting something that you've submitted before to a UiPath hackathon. And teams only can be a maximum of 4 people. You can either be one individual or up to 4 people, but no more than that. And again, you need to register separately, and you can submit more than one solution as a participant or a team, and even on different teams if you'd like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dhruv and KJ to start on the demos.
Awesome. Cool. Mind if I rip that share?
You want to me to stop sharing?
Yeah, if you stop sharing, I'll just rip it, and then I'll cover mine.
Great.
Thank you. Let me go to that. Thank you for that. I'm KJ, by the way. Dhruv will introduce himself here in a minute, but I'm KJ. I'm a sales engineer. I guess actually technically my official title is Global Technical Enablement Manager, but I consider myself a sales engineer at heart. I've been doing these things for a while, been in the SE game for a long time, and I come from an implementation background, which has helped me be super effective when selling it. I've got a few slides here, just kind of my little perspective around how AI fits into this and just a way to think about it. Like maybe you're joining this and you're like, how do I actually try to enable this in the most easiest way to still give yourself a fighting chance? And then Drew's going to cover a little bit more of the generative AI and, kind of help you take it to that next level if you're already equipped, right? We want to try and get everything across the board and give you the experience of building things. So we figured going basic to more complex was the move here. So I'll let him introduce himself when he gets to his slides. I've got a couple. So let me hit the share screen here. Go to that, pull this over. And then, yeah, go here. Awesome. So when we think about automation in general, I think it's assumed everyone on this call understands how automation works. So I don't think we need to cover how UiPath works. If you do, it's a user interface / API low code tool that allows you to automate virtually anything across the board. When I think about artificial intelligence and I think about these hack weeks and I think about all these things that we're doing, artificial intelligence is just another activity in the end-to-end string of automation, which is why when you think about it, we have UI capabilities, we have API capabilities, and now everyone's clamoring for artificial intelligence capabilities. Okay. So when I look at that, I say, well, chances are you probably need to have an automation, go grab a bunch of data from somewhere. And then we want to do something with that data set based on some sort of predictive analysis is like an easy way to describe it. The predictive analysis is actually an activity in that whole overall workflow. So when you're thinking about that, we look at some examples that have won in the past from a demo perspective. If we think about it, here's some example use case that we have. I'm going to show you this demo here in a minute, but the one that won the AI Summit was effective product sequencing. In short, what they did is gathered a bunch of data, and I'll actually skip to the workflow design. Here's what they did. Back-ended into a data source, went to the respective systems to grab all those data sets out. And then they have these analyzer and customer behavior. So they had all of these different models essentially, right, that were built in, and they built them in a bunch of different ways. They use Python, Scikit, Pandas, but they built a bunch of stuff, consolidated that and passed those inputs, hosted that in AI Center to use that as a recommendation model. So based on the product and based on how well it was selling, based on the customer segment, insert whatever here. The video is awesome. And here you'll get the slides afterwards so you can see it. It was able to give us a recommendation. That activity could virtually take a few seconds, but building that takes a ton of time. And what happens afterward is the product suggestion could then say, oh, here's your suggestion. That's the action, which now flows back into automation. So if we look at that, I think of it as an activity. Automation, activity as part of the automation that has some artificial intelligence lens to it, right? Could be anything that you decide, right? Natural language processing, sentiment analysis, machine learning, whole nine. Then you do the automation with the product suggestion. So when you're looking at automation, that's a way to think about it. I'm going to stop there before I just get to the demo. Is this making sense to everyone on the call? I wanted to say at the most basic level, that's really all artificial intelligence it is when it works with automation. If you think ChatGPT is the AI, right? But passing the data in could be automated. Pulling the data out can be automated. That's what we do best. AI becomes a part of that to solve a deeper business problem. I'm gonna stop there. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll just get ready to just show an example of resume scraping. I will take silence too. It's okay. Probably tracking along. Totally good. If you want to see one of these in action, got this nice video pulled up here. So let's go to that full screen. Let me make sure I'm sharing sound. And cool. Let's give this a whirl.
In this demo, we'll see how UiPath robots can use AI to screen candidates for a job position in an HR management application. Based on the contents of the candidate's resume, the robot will decide whether that candidate is a good match for the position or not. To do that, the robot uses the Skill platform, which is offered by SkyMind and allows the creation of custom AI models. In the Activities panel on the left side, we can see activities used to interact with Skill, like Skill Deployment Scope, Classify Data, and Decision Learner. they are used in this workflow that reads the resume from a PDF and then transforms the data into a representation that the AI model can process. After that, the robot will classify the candidate based on the contents of the resume. And it'll output a prediction of what kind of professional he or she is, as well as its confidence level about that prediction. If the confidence level is lower than a specific threshold, the robot will request the help of an operator. By using the decision learner activity, the operator can teach the robot whether that candidate fits the requirements of the job position. Finally, based on the prediction, the robot will shortlist the candidate or reject the application. Let's run the workflow and see how it works in practice. First, the robot opens and logs into the HR management system. It then checks the list of candidates and filters the applications that were initiated for the data scientist position. For each candidate, the robot accesses the page with the details and downloads the PDF containing the resume of the candidate. It saves the file and reads its contents. We can see here that we already have a strange situation. A farmer applying for a data scientist position. Well, this must have been a mistake. The robot understands that this candidate is not a good match for the data scientist position and automatically rejects the application. In the last step of the evaluation, it writes a note to indicate that this candidate was screened by a robot. The robot then moves to the next candidate, opens the details page, and downloads the new resume. Based on the contents, like education and skills, the robot understands that this is a data scientist, shortlists the candidate, and writes a note about the automatic screening. Now the robot will evaluate the last initiated application. The last candidate to be processed also has a technical background, but not exactly the profile of a data scientist. Since the robot doesn't have enough confidence to decide, it will ask for the help of an operator. The operator can examine the resume and teach the robot if this candidate fits the profile of a data scientist. This new data is then used to improve the accuracy and the confidence of the AI model. After processing all candidates, the robot closes all used applications and finishes its execution. This demo showed how to integrate UiPath with the Skill platform to create the next generation of robots that can make decisions and learn from humans.
All right. So kind of how it works. Obviously an older demo, right? We saw some old versions, but we've been doing it for a while. But I think the concept is still very, very clear, right? If you're trying to do something and you want to be able to try and give some confidence to screen something, we're going to need some sort of artificial intelligence layer to be able to do that. Because automation, unless you want to try and build in 8 million, if it contains this word or this word or this word or this word, which doesn't make any sense, that's the value of AI. And I just want to be able to show that as a more basic example. That's all I had to really share. Any questions around that before I pass it over to Dhruv?
Thanks, KJ.
Awesome. Cool. Works for me. I'm done. I'll stop sharing.
Awesome. Thanks, KJ. And quick introduction, everyone. Hi, my name's Dhruv Patel, sales engineer here at UiPath. So again, just like KJ, I've been doing this for a bit, knowledgeable on the platform, building automations, and really here to talk to you, specifically around, heard generally AI and machine learning, but now dive specifically into the generative AI side of the house. Share the screen. Awesome. So, first just kind of starting off with generative AI and, bringing it into UiPath, and just a couple areas I want to focus in on before we get into something we call our patterns. Really, when you think about how you can leverage generative AI within your automations, think about, the UiPath side being there to help you with content gathering, right? Gathering data from multiple sources, synthesizing that data, doing additional transformations, adjustments to the data, really to then be added into the prompt and then sent to that generative AI model to get a response. So really helping kind of on the front end or any kind of pre-processing activities, combining it with specialized models, right? So you saw some specialized models that KJ was showing in his demo. Sometimes, there's document understanding type models, communications mining. There's a ton of UiPath specific specialized models and others that you can really bring into the process stream and use in conjunction with generative AI to really complete that end-to-end process. And finally, right, human in the loop. As you're building these automations and you're trying to bring in AI and machine learning, don't forget that, right? Especially when you think of generative AI, there will always be a need for human in the loop, right? Because generative AI specifically has sometimes hallucinations, right? Or there's things that, you don't want to get wrong and you want a human to go in and validate. And so remember kind of those three kind of key things as we talk about generative AI and some patterns for really how you can start to bring it into your automations. So I mentioned, patterns, right? And what we wanted to do is really break down the different ways you can bring in generative AI into your automations to help you start to think of different use cases, right? As you start to submit these things for HyperHack or Hack Week. There's really kind of three patterns we break it down into, and the use cases that we'll cover. So I have some subsequent slides where we go into some more use cases. They may use one of these patterns and focus specifically on that one kind of end-to-end use case. It might even use combinations of the patterns, which you'll see in a demo coming up, right? So you could use, as many as one and kind of fine tune your submission to really focus in on one of these patterns, or use a combination of them to really achieve an end-to-end solution. Pattern one is going to be more along the lines of reader-writer, right? You'll have data and information from multiple sources that you want to bring into your prompt to submit to the large language model or to the generative AI model that you're using, and ultimately have that do something with that information, right? It could be writing more content, writing more emails, doing summaries, taking a lot of data, synthesizing it down into less data, or vice versa, right? Taking small amounts of data, synthesizing it into a larger piece of content. So that's really where kind of that reader-writer pattern comes into play. Pattern two is going a little bit further than that, right? You're still grabbing data from multiple sources, using UiPath, using the capabilities to interact with multiple systems, interact with multiple data sources, and kind of ultimately orchestrate that process end to end. You'll use UiPath to help with providing that data to a large language model. But then what you're really looking for is an output that's more analysis based, right? So it could be data as the output. It could be a next best action, so something specific that you want to execute or to happen, some sort of decision that's being made. And then based on that output, really have UiPath go and actually do something, right? Execute on that information that the LLM or the generative AI has then kind of synthesized or created. So really kind of going that next step further and focusing in on actually doing something and analyzing data and acting on it. And then finally, pattern three is going to be more focused around something you're familiar with, right? ChatGPT was really the first way that a lot of us interacted and were introduced to generative AI. And so in a similar vein, right, having some sort of conversational interface, that could be a chat, that could be, even just a form or apps, for example, to interact with your LLM, right? And have, UiPath help provide more information, provide more context, maybe even provide information from a knowledge source, right, to the LLM to include in its final output. And that could be just responding back to the user through that same conversational interface, even taking action downstream as well, based off of the output or the result of the LLM. And then even, additionally going back to that response flow as well. So a few different ways to think about it kind of high level to help you kind of dive into your use cases as you come up with them and really think about the different patterns that you could start to bring into your automations. We'll just take a quick pause there, see if there's any questions on this before we get into just a few example use cases to kind of get the ball rolling. Awesome. So to give a couple examples, right? These next few slides, which again you'll get as part of the recording, and then when we send out some of this information. But to give you some example use cases for each of these patterns, pattern one, right? That reader-writer, so doing that email summary or email creation, summarization, and content creation. Right. Another kind of key aspect is having that human in the loop, right? So even though you're using the generative AI to create something or create content, you want that human to have the ability to do some validation before maybe there's additional distribution of that information, right, through automation. Couple examples, right? Proposal writing, customer summaries, right? Creating an email for automatically replying back to certain emails coming in, just summarizing, right? Key information. It could be, from a document, could be from a couple, review sources, different things like that, right? Customer feedback responses, and just making it more digestible to help someone focus in on kind of that key content. When we talk about the analyst doer flow, this is going to be things like the two-way match, which you'll actually see a demo of, where you actually have it analyzing data and executing on that data downstream based on certain kind of decisions that it makes. You could use it for structuring and normalizing data, creating reports from multiple sources, right? Generating that data, adding it into certain reports, even doing, right, things like test data creation and after call work. So there's a couple different options. It kind of can also bleed into that pattern one as well. So this is where, you can start to use and see how these patterns are separate, but can also converge at times depending on those use cases. And lastly, pattern 3, more of an assistant type use case. We have things like Ask GPT, for example, and you can go and start using that right in our marketplace. But really just to give you examples of how you can think about creating an assistant, right? A knowledge-based assistant, self-service help desk. Those types of things can all be different ways that you can start to use generative AI in this sort of pattern for your assistant type execution. So going into, an example for pattern 2, two-way match, right? You saw that that was one of the use case examples that we had. And so, I'll go through a video of this as well, but first to kind of just walk you through the solution, right? And kind of how to think about using generative AI within the automation itself. Today we have automations that are built with two-way matches, right? You can build it, but really the key is you have to build in a lot of the logic, right? A lot of the understanding of the extracted data that's coming from an invoice. You have to build in the logic to handle, once that data is extracted from document understanding, how do we then do a comparison with the data that we have in our ERP system? And then ultimately, what's the rules that we put in place, the hard defined rules to then go and make a decision downstream of if there is a match or if there isn't a match. And so a lot of that development complexity and a lot of the intricacies around creating those rules were absolved away by splitting up some of that logic with generative AI, right? So instead of having to actually code in detail some of those different decision points and some of that logic is where, I ended up bringing in generative AI to actually handle the decision points, right? And so we kind of follow this flow, right? An invoice comes in, could be through email, a share file, document understanding. So a specialized model, right, will come in, do that extraction. We've trained it on that document. Then the first thing we'll want to do is do some cleansing, right? Match the columns from the document to the columns that we have in SAP, just so that the comparison we get is a little bit more consistent downstream. And so we have one call that'll go in, do some of that data cleansing just with natural language. I just asked generative AI to do the cleansing for me and to do some matching. Then at the same time, I have the automation, based on the PO that we've extracted from document understanding, go into SAP, extract the PO data, combine that all into one prompt, and then finally have generative AI do that comparison for me, right? So I don't, again, have to build any of that logic in, and I have flexibility with that prompt, right? And adjusting how the prompt does its comparison and how I'm asking or instructing generative AI to help me out in this use case. And then, of course, right, human in the loop. So if there is an issue, we have Action Center. Users can easily go in, see what generative AI found, verify, do additional checks, and then go ahead and continue on through the process, right? And of course, if everything matches, that's where that straight through processing comes into play. So this, to kind of see this in action. Computer freezing. 1 second.
Nice.
Yeah, right.
Live demos, man. That's how it works. Should have just recorded yourself speaking to this whole thing. We should have just played that.
All right. Awesome. So, this is just gonna, again, go through that same exact example we went through, but to see it running, right? And so this is going to be that invoice we need to process. You'll see here, I've put placeholders for the prompts. So I put in the actual text, and then within the prompts themselves, I have some instructions at the top, and then placeholders within the prompt for where I want data or where I want the automation to put in data dynamically, right? So the tables for the comparison. But then I even took it a step further. Within the prompt itself, and we'll go into this on another slide in a little bit more detail, but I asked it to respond back to me in a specific format, right? One thing that's key is when you're going to be developing and using something like generative AI, having a consistent, reliable format that the output is in will be really beneficial to kind of working with that output downstream in your automation. So something to think about, what I ended up doing was asking it to respond in a JSON string format, and was able to build it to a point where it was consistently giving me the right format, and then I was easily able to use it within my downstream automation. We'll go ahead and start the automation. Again, you'll see, so the first thing we're going to use in document understanding to do that data extraction. At the same time, we'll read in those prompt templates. And now, since we have the purchase order, we'll go into SAP. We have that number from the invoice document. We'll have the robot go in and extract the purchase order data. At the same time, it's doing that cleansing, right, of the data table from document understanding. Then we combine the table, right? It happens pretty quick, but we combine the table from SAP or from our ERP system with the invoice extracted data, and then we send it to generative AI to basically give us an answer, right? And so I'll take a quick pause here. You can see that generative AI mentioned, right, that it wasn't matching, but what it also did was give us an explanation, right? So I had asked it to explain, and we were able to then put that into validation station so that whoever's viewing it or reviewing it from a human in the loop standpoint can easily understand, hey, why did generative AI say, this data wasn't matching, the invoice data wasn't matching that purchase order data. It's a really seamless way to handle that human in the loop scenario when you're working with generative AI and having generative AI handle some of that complex logic of comparing the data from your invoice to your purchase order. And so we can pull up the SAP system, and you'll see here we can highlight that generative AI was able to find that the 1600 quantity didn't match the 160 that was actually in the system, but it also was able to get that the price was a mismatch as well, right? That $453 and the $4,053. So you're able to leverage it to really handle even small nuance differences seamlessly and develop it pretty quickly. So any questions on that? So I'll do one more kind of example here, and this is slightly different type of use case, but in this case is meeting AI, right? And what we built was basically an automation that as soon as the Zoom is done, the recording and transcript and all that are uploaded right to the cloud. Using integration service, we have that automatically kick off an automation to go grab the transcript, do a call to generative AI to do two things, right? To summarize the meeting for us, but also extract out the action items from that transcript. Now, we didn't just stop there, right? The summary, of course, we pass on through to this final output, which I'll get to, but really we'll take those action items to kind of the next level. So we take those action items, we do another integration service call to a generative AI model, but this time we have some context applied, right? So we have a list of automations that the robot knows we have access to. The robot supplies that list of automations to the generative AI model. And now with just a simple prompt, we're able to ask generative AI to say, hey, based on these action items, what automations downstream do you need to run to basically provide, whether it's follow-up or additional links or grab additional meeting times and automatically populate it into that follow-up email. And so generative AI intelligently makes the choices based on those action items that it came up with earlier. It'll go ahead and kick off those downstream automations. So we'll leverage that structured output to kick off the documentation, getting the meeting times, and even getting the recording link downstream automations. and we'll put that, compose it into a final email and automatically send it to the person who set up the meeting, right? And so this way, we can use the email draft as a way for the person to review, the action items, the suggested follow-ups, and even the meeting summary before sending out to all the participants. So pretty handy, another kind of use case example of a way you could start to bring in generative AI. And, one thing you'll notice is we've done a few API calls, right? Or a few generative AI calls in these automations. And really the point there is sometimes if you split up some of the complex logic that you're thinking through and trying to have generative AI handle, you can split it up into smaller chunks. Sometimes that gives you more consistent outputs and just more, reliable results. Just from, something I found with working with generative AI within these automations. Now, lastly, one key thing too that kind of goes along that lines of kind of splitting up your calls to generative AI models, prompting, right? And figuring out what's the best prompt to use and work to get, consistent answers and to get structured output. So, definitely, take some time to play around with different prompts, right? See how the output is, how it's reacting, how generative AI model, whichever one you choose, right? If it's Azure, if it's a different one, see some of the nuances and really fine tune it so that it gets you the output most consistently that you're looking for in a structured way, right? There's also capabilities, with things like OpenAI where you can do function calling, right? Or you can even specify the specific output. And so those are definitely key areas to look into really understanding what are the best ways to provide context, to provide information and enough information and instruction to generative AI models so that it responds back in a way that you can handle and use downstream within your automations. Awesome. So with that, I will pass it on to Joe.
Thanks, Dhruv. Let me pull up my slides really quickly. It's great to be talking with you all. Oh, thanks, Dan. I think you pulled it up. You can go ahead. I think you're on the judging criteria, right? Oh, Diana, you're on mute. Sorry.
Say hi, Diana.
Hi.
There you go.
Thanks. So we just want you guys to know what the scoring is, so that you're paying attention to that as you're building and submitting your projects. So the impact is 25%, the concept is 20, the technology is 25, the completion is 20, and the presentation is 10. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know too. And we also want you to know that the awards are pretty good this year. So they're the same awards whether you join category 1 or 2. So looking forward to somebody winning this and being able to announce that on our websites. And then just a reminder again, the submission deadline is July 14th. That's coming up very soon, but you have another week in order to make sure that all your documents and all your submission information is submitted. And these are just some guidelines. Your presentation could be no longer than 10 slides, your solution video no longer than 5 minutes. So really make sure you pay attention to this because the judges will be looking for this. And Joe, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Diana. I'll be really quick. I'm on the product marketing team for UiPath. But before I worked at UiPath, I was a product manager in the US Treasury, where I essentially ran like a ever-going hackathon. So Diana asked me to share some thoughts on just kind of best practices around hackathons. I think the cool thing about the opportunity that you all have ahead of you is that a lot of the hacks, quote unquote, that we worked on at Treasury, whether it was our first e-commerce checkout buttons with like a PayPal or Apple Pay, or our mobile check deposit solution so that people don't have to literally travel hundreds of miles to drop off checks. A lot of those like R&D initiatives eventually turned into actual products. And we've seen similar things internally with UiPath hackathons as well. In fact, we have a hack week that is wrapping up now, and last year's hack week had directly it is directly attributed to adding new elements to our roadmap. So you never know what solution that you work on that could have viability for a public use case. As we go to the next slide, I have a few suggestions just on putting together a great submission. So first up, solve a personal pain point. I find that those moments when you're, sending in a check to the US Treasury and you're like, why in the world is this so complicated? And at the time, like 2016, that can be a driver for the solutions that you create. So when we build out like the mobile check deposit solution, for instance, we all had used in our personal lives mobile banking, and we were like, there's got to be a way to bring it into government. It turns out it was hard, but eventually we did get the mobile check deposit into government. So again, you never know what can go to production if you solve a personal pain point. We've had a lot of great demonstrations from KJ and Dhruv today about ways to leverage AI in your solutions. And I think there's lots of opportunities when you combine AI and automation to do so in unexpected new ways. So, virtually everybody has tried out ChatGPT. Virtually everybody gets the sense that you can summarize, that you can ask for advice. But what are those downstream actions that automation can help with? So once you get a summary of something, what actions can those drive? And you can come up with some new novel use cases that way as well. Third, imagine if your solution is going to be used by 1,000 busy non-technical people. Like, is it simple enough to get started easily? Does all the documentation that's needed to run the solution, is it all easily accessible? How's the UX? So imagine like this thing goes to scale and goes out to production. Imagine that end user and what their experience will look like. And finally, as you're preparing the content for actually presenting your solution, think about the V2 of your video and how oftentimes it can be more important than the version 1. So whatever you need to do to edit it down, to kind of sit in the eyes of judges, like imagine if you're going through hundreds of hackathon submissions, what would stand out to you? And then craft your video that way. So those are a few tips. If you want ideas or brainstorming about the solutions that you're working on, feel free to reach out through email. I'm at joe.edwards@uipath.com. I'll drop my info in the chat as well. But good luck to everybody, and I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions.
Thanks, Joe. So now I'm going to turn it over to Melanie and Ash.
Thank you so much, Diana. Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Huh. I am a solution architect from UiPath's professional service team. And today I'll be covering how tips and tricks on how to select an ideal core or AI or DU use case. And as Joe said from before, there are a lot of tips, but here we have some consideration for both core and AI and DU use case. Is that when you're picking those use cases, think of something that might come in as high volume and high time savings throughout the years, right? And second is a very repetitive manual process that might be painful to always, click on and process daily. Those are some great ideal candidates for automation. And then another thing is look at things that you or others are doing every day and how can it be improved by automation, either like personal or professional life. So there's a lot of sample where in our personal life, we have like things that we do every day that can be turned into automation, and also professional life on like enterprise solution with like, where there is always AP accounting in every single company. So every invoice process probably pretty straightforward and can be replicated throughout different department and stuff like that deal with invoice or purchase order. And then choose the use case that you can be excited about that will help you build out the automation and feel satisfied once you're alleviated from these kind of work. And those can have a positive impact on your or others' life once you alleviate people from those tedious tasks. And additional consideration for AI and DU use case are make sure the documents are easy for digitalization. So things that are like very fuzzy that sometimes OCR are not able to read might not be a great use case for an AIDU use case, just because that first, before we even send anything to the model, we need to translate those image document into a digitized letters and numbers for the model to understand. And then the second thing to think about is the classification part. Sometimes you might have use case where you know the source only come from a particular place, and then you can just use RPA to do the classification. Or sometimes you might leverage some intelligent keyword classifier or ML classifier if the document are very similar to that extent. So think about how hard it is to classify from document type to document type can help you find an easier AIDU use case to tackle to get yourself up into the skill that you need to build a great classification. And then the access to sample documents are very important because your ML model and AI model are as good as the sample data set that you train the model on. And any time that you can leverage any of our out-of-the-box pre-trained ML model, it will save you considerate amount of time to train the model themselves. Some of the out-of-the-box ML model like invoice model and PO model are really great on US invoices. So you probably don't even need to train them before you can just deploy them as an ML skill. And then understanding your document structure when you're picking your use case, such as structured document, semi-structured document, or unstructured document. So it goes from easy to hard mode from those document type. So anything that's structured, for example, like W9 or any kind of form that does not change any variation, it's considered a structured document that you can just use form extractor. Anything that's more of semi-structured, for example, an invoice, a receipt from a restaurant, that varies in variation depending vendor from vendor. You have something called ML extractor for the semi-structured document. For anything that are unstructured document, for example, like a automobile contract or anything that's basically in paragraphs, you're probably looking at using something like generative AI and ChatGPT or language model analysis models. So for those are more of model that you need more training data on. So when you select what document or what kind of model you want to use, you want to think about what kind of structure of those documents are in. And then variation of document, as I said, is the different vendor have very different variation depending on how accurate you want to build the model for the hackathon. You might want to think of just limited to the variation to either 5 to 10 variation for the first iteration. And then number of extraction fields can also impact like the development time, because first you need to build the model itself in AI Center. And then second, you have to map it taxonomy and do post-processing of those extraction fields. So when you're thinking about the demo and stuff like that, minimizing extraction field to only things that you need for the downstream will be very helpful for your hackathon project. So another thing that is very similar to classification is that once you have classification done, do you have multiple documents that need inside one file that you need splitting? If you can go away from splitting, that is recommended, as splitting is only offered in our intelligent keyword classifier. And also that you will complicate your solution a little bit, that might add into your timeline. So that is also something to consider about. And then number of languages of the document comes in from can be like many as you work on different global projects. We'll say that if you go with English or any Spanish, Latin-based language, that should be no problem with any of our out-of-the-box models. And then for anything that's handwritten context for extraction, we want to think really carefully if you want to pick a use case that had handwritten content, because first hurdle you need to go through is the OCR. If the OCR is not able to read it, as we humans sometimes can't read some doctor handwritten content, then it's hard for the OCR to digitize that. So that's something also you should keep in mind as well. But last but not the least is the post-processing option for all the field that it extracted. If you're able to look into other system to validate some of the extraction result, then you can really cut down on the human in the loop component in Action Center. And that might be some more of like smoother automation to present as a demo in the hackathon as well. So that's it from me. I'll pass it over to Ash.
All right.
Thanks, Melody.
Thanks, Mel. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Ashrita Kallu, and I'm a RPA developer from UiPath Professional Services team. And I've been working on AIDU projects since I joined UiPath in 2020. Today, I'm going to talk about how to best present your HyperHack solution. To start with, it's always good to have one of the initial slides in your presentation. Have your introduction that's including your name, role, your company, and maybe pictures of your team members that worked on this project. And then it's advisable to include the following, starting with the problem statement. Describe what is the problem that you're trying to solve and try to keep it precise. The proposed solution. What is the solution and what's the approach you took to solve this identified problem? And have a slide to mention all the tools and technologies used. Also include all the UiPath products used in this. End users. Discuss who the end users are for your solution, what department, industry, or market opportunities your solution is pointing to. Explain how it addresses a pressing need faced by this specific group, and highlight the key features of your solution. Results and impact. If there is any data or metrics derived from your solution, present it. Don't forget to show how your solution can be scalable. Coming to the solution architecture design diagram, it is not mandatory, but you can choose to either show the solution architecture diagram, or instead you can show some relevant images or other diagrams that enhance the understanding of your solution. The demo. Have a presentable demo that shows all the key features and functionalities. Keep in mind to leave room for Q&A. Coming to the time frame, like Diana just mentioned, try to have the presentation with not more than 10 slides. And since you have to accommodate time for demo, Q&A, everything in approximately under 10 minutes, keep the PowerPoint slides as precise as possible. Lastly, try to effectively communicate the value of your solution and show how good it could be. That's it from me. Any questions? Now back to you, Diana.
Thanks, Ash. Great. So this is our last slide. It's really what's next. I know Russell's on the call with us today, but throughout this process, you're also getting help from our MVPs who are monitoring the UiPath Forum. And so if you have any questions, any struggle, so you've met the people on this call, but you just need to go to the UiPath Forum. We have a link here that you can join and just ask us what questions you're having problems with. Again, we have people on the forum who are answering questions or looking at your questions that you have regarding the hackathon. Also on the forum is the use case repository. There's a URL for that here. So this is so that we can evaluate your solution on how effectively and efficiently you've used UiPath products. So this is a great showcase for what you're trying to accomplish. And just to call out some of the names of the people on the forum who have helped with this project. We have Tracy Dixon, who's a 4-time MVP, Priya Darshini, who also is a 4-time MVP with UiPath. And then Sharon and Russell our MVPs, and in particular, the AI specialist. And then we have Jeremy, who's a hackathon specialist. So again, thank you everybody for being on this call. I'm going to stop now for questions if there aren't any, but please do let us know if there's anything we can help you with. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys another opportunity if you want to open up your mics, if there's any questions anybody has. Any comments? Okay. Well, I want to thank all the speakers today for coming and helping with this presentation. Again, in the chat, I put that the recording will be available starting tomorrow and the URL to where to find that. So with that, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your help.
Thanks,
And good
Diana.
luck on the hackathon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Great
Thank you.
presentation.
Have a good one.